All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we're diving deep into some pretty intense material. We're looking at an excerpt from Sweetie and the Brute.
Mhm.
It's by C.W. Shine.
And it paints this really vivid picture of someone just wrestling with, like, their inner world, you know?
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's so deep dive worthy about it?
Well, the thing that really grabbed me was how the writer uses these metaphors. A
Hi.
messy inner world, a scared little girl named Sweetie, and this looming figure called the Brute.
Okay, yeah. I can see how that would be both intriguing and a bit unsettling.
Yeah, you just can't look away.
Right,
Right.
right. It's interesting how the writer's using these metaphors to, like, externalize something so personal, maybe even painful. It's like they're giving a shape to these abstract feelings, making them something tangible to, like, grapple with.
It's like looking at an abstract painting. You might not know exactly what it is, but it just evokes this strong emotion, right?
That's a great analogy.
So let's unpack this messy inner world metaphor. What could that represent?
Well, it could really be a representation of so many things.
Yeah.
Past traumas that we haven't fully processed, internal conflicts that we kind of keep pushing down,
Mm-hmm.
negative thought patterns that have kind of taken root, and they just keep growing.
Oh, wow.
Like, imagine it as a psychological landscape.
Mm.
And right now, this one is definitely in a state of distress.
And then there's Sweetie. She's described as like trapped in this messy world, almost drowning in it.
Wow.
It makes you think about those times in your own life when you've just felt completely overwhelmed.
Right, absolutely.
Have you ever felt like that? Like there was a part of yourself that was just lost in the chaos?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Sweetie's story really taps into that universal feeling of vulnerability.
Yeah.
We all experience it. It's like she embodies that kind of wounded inner child that so many of us carry around, that part of ourselves that's been, hurt or neglected.
Yeah.
And the way she describes the Brute, lurking in the shadows, even invading her dreams, it's really chilling.
It's like he's become this constant presence in her life,
Yeah.
like something she's almost come to expect.
That's the really unsettling part. How she seems to have normalized this, like, toxic force.
Right.
This speaks volumes about how we can internalize negativity, letting it control us, even dictate our self-worth.
It's like the Brute could represent like an abusive figure from the past. Or even that inner critic we all have that can be so harsh and unforgiving.
Right. Exactly.
The one that tells you you're not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy.
Oh, yeah. I know that voice all too well.
Ouch, that hits close to home.
Doesn't it?
So what's interesting is that the narrator decides to actually engage with Sweetie, offer her comfort, and start a dialogue. It feels like a major turning point in the story. Why would that be so significant?
Well, this shift highlights the importance of acknowledging our inner pain.
Mm-hmm.
Those parts of ourselves that we'd rather keep hidden.
Right.
It's like we're finally shining a light on those dark corners, offering compassion and understanding instead of judgment. And what's amazing is that it seems to have a real impact.
Yeah, the mess starts to feel less overwhelming, like some of the clutter is clearing away.
Mm-hmm.
Sweetie even starts to like untangle herself.
Wow.
It's like simply acknowledging her pain has started the healing process.
That's powerful.
To finally feel seen and heard, that must be incredible.
Absolutely. It's as if by simply being acknowledged, Sweetie begins to reclaim her power. That validation can be incredibly transformative, both in this story and, in our own lives.
Right.
It makes you wonder, if we offered that same compassion to ourselves, what kind of healing could take place?
That's such a powerful thought.
Mm-hmm.
But just when things are looking up, there's this sudden shift in the narrative. The writing becomes fragmented, frantic even. The narrator mentions the Brute coming back, and then there's this gap, like a missing piece of memory.
That gap is so interesting. What is the narrator remembering?
Right.
Is it a shared memory with Sweetie?
Mm-hmm.
Are their experiences somehow merging? Are they experiencing Sweetie's trauma as their own?
It's almost like by reaching out to Sweetie, the narrator is also opening themselves up to the full force of the Brute's presence.
It could suggest that true healing requires facing our demons head on.
Yeah.
Even if it means reliving those painful experiences. It's about integrating those fragmented parts of ourselves, acknowledging the darkness in order to embrace the light.
That's a powerful message, but also a little scary, right?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what the narrator's so afraid to remember.
It really does. It's like opening a door you thought was locked forever, and suddenly all these memories come flooding back. What's really interesting is the way the narrator describes their relationship with Sweetie. It starts with them as like an observer, someone on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
But then the boundaries start to blur. Have you ever noticed that? Like,
No.
sometimes when you try to help someone through something, you end up on like a journey of self-discovery too.
Totally. It's like their stories become intertwined.
Right.
And the narrator becomes more than just a witness to Sweetie's pain.
Exactly. And then there's that revelation that Sweetie has been watching the narrator all along.
Wait, what?
That adds a whole other layer of complexity, doesn't it?
That part really threw me for a loop. How could Sweetie have been watching the narrator if they've only just met?
Right.
It's like they've always been connected somehow, even if the narrator doesn't realize it yet.
That could be a hint that Sweetie isn't a separate entity at all,
Oh.
but like a part of the narrator themselves, a piece of their psyche they've pushed away or denied.
Like maybe we all have a Sweetie inside us. That vulnerable part that we try to protect.
Mm-hmm. And that's why the narrator's so resistant to seeing themselves as similar to Sweetie.
Right.
They don't want to admit they have that same vulnerability,
Yeah.
that same darkness within.
I know. I've definitely tried to hide those parts of myself before.
It's a really common defense mechanism. We often try to distance ourselves from our pain,
Yeah.
especially if it's tied up with like shame or guilt.
Right.
But as the narrator connects with Sweetie, they start to see the truth, that they've both experienced similar joys and pains.
Mm-hmm.
They're more alike than the narrator initially wants to admit.
It's like they're two sides of the same coin. And that realization seems crucial to the healing process.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we're all complex beings, capable of both light and shadow. You know, we can't fully embrace our wholeness without acknowledging every part of ourselves, even the messy bits.
Beautifully said. And it makes you wonder if the brute is also like a shared figure.
Ooh,
Maybe a manifestation of some external force that's impacted both Sweetie and the narrator.
like a shared trauma.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a systemic issue that's contributed to their pain.
It's like they're both victims of the same oppressive force, which is a powerful image.
But I think that abrupt ending, it's on purpose. It's like the author saying, okay, you've had a peek inside, now you deal with it.
So we're left with this huge question mark. What is the author remembering? And what does it mean for their, like, whole journey?
Big questions. And what's really interesting is this isn't just about the author, you know? It's about all of us. What are those hidden memories, the things we haven't dealt with, the shadow selves we need to confront if we want to heal and move on?
Man, so much to think about already. I am dying to know what that memory is and how it changes things.
Well, hold that thought, because that's exactly what we're going to explore next time.
Ooh, can't wait.
We'll dig into that turning point, the author's memory, and what it might reveal about the whole healing process.
This is going to be good.
It is.
So that cliffhanger, right? I was still thinking about it. The author is starting to remember something big, and it's all tied to the brute coming back. Like we're finally getting a glimpse into what's really going on in their head.
Yeah, it's a huge moment in the excerpt. Think about it. The author's memory, it's triggered by Sweetie talking about the brute coming back.
Right.
Which means they weren't just watching this happen. They were actually there during this whole traumatic event.
Wait, hold on. You're saying the author might have been more than just a witness? Like maybe even involved in what happened to Sweetie?
It's definitely possible. And it just makes everything so much more complicated, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if the author was somehow part of the events that messed up their inner world, well, then you have to think about guilt, responsibility, even self-forgiveness.
Wow, I hadn't even thought about it like that. It's like the author's not just trying to understand the brute. They're also trying to understand their own role in all this.
Exactly. And that's what makes this excerpt so powerful, I think. It's not just about facing your demons. It's about facing the fact that sometimes you might have helped create those demons.
You're saying we can be both the victim and the, like, perpetrator in our own heads.
Yeah, it's a tough concept.
It is. It's heavy. So how do you even begin to deal with that?
Well, it's not easy, and it takes time. But I think the first step is just acknowledging that this dynamic exists inside all of us. We all have the capacity for darkness and light.
So it's about embracing that, the complexity, instead of running from it?
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that our past, even the bad stuff, it's made us who we are. It's shaped our beliefs, our actions, even our relationships.
Which brings us back to the author's memory. That's a big deal, right?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think it means? What's it telling us about their past?
Yeah.
This story speaks to something deeply human.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that struggle to confront our inner demons, to make sense of our pain,
Yeah.
and to ultimately find healing.
It's a reminder that we're not alone in these struggles. Everyone has their own sweeties and brutes.
Right.
And even in the darkest places, there's always hope for recovery.
Absolutely. It also makes you think about the power of metaphor
Right.
to understand our inner world. Sometimes it's easier to process tough emotions if we can give them a name, a story, a face.
Yeah. Like instead of saying, I'm feeling anxious, you could say, my inner critic, my brute, is really loud today.
Yeah, exactly.
It sounds silly, but it can actually help you gain some distance from those feelings, you know?
Absolutely. And by sharing this story, the writer invites us to explore our own inner landscapes, to acknowledge those sweeties and brutes we all have,
Yeah.
and to start that journey of healing and integration.
It's like they're giving us permission to be messy, to acknowledge those shadow parts of ourselves, and to start working towards wholeness. And maybe, as that fragmented memory suggests, the key to unlocking real freedom and self-acceptance is hidden within those buried truths. It's in those brutes we try so hard to forget.
That's a powerful thought.
You know, it's interesting how the document just ends, like, so abruptly.
Yeah.
It's like the writer just hit a wall, like a point where the memories just became too much to bear.
That sudden stop is really telling, you know?
Yeah.
It makes you think about those times when you're digging into something painful and you just kind of have to pull back for a bit. Like, it could be that the act of remembering, of confronting the brute, was just too overwhelming for the narrator at that point. Maybe they needed time to process those fragmented memories before they could even understand what happened.
It's like they opened Pandora's box, and all these intense emotions came rushing out. What do you think those missing pieces hold? What's the narrator so afraid to remember?
Well, it could be a specific event, you know?
Yeah.
Like a moment of intense pain, a betrayal, something that's been buried deep in their subconscious. Or maybe it's a realization about the brute itself, something that challenges their whole understanding of themselves and the world.
And what about Sweetie? What role does she play in all of this? Is she a separate entity? Or a part of the narrator that they've been trying to suppress?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's possible that Sweetie represents the narrator's vulnerability,
Okay.
their innocence, the part of them that was most deeply wounded by the brute.
And by comforting Sweetie, by acknowledging her pain, the narrator is also starting to heal those wounded parts of themselves.
Exactly. It's as if they're finally offering themselves the compassion and understanding they've been denying for so long.
This whole document is like a puzzle with missing pieces. It's fascinating and frustrating and just deeply thought-provoking.
Yeah, it really is.
It really makes you think.
Yeah, it reminds us that the human psyche is complex and often mysterious. We all have our own sweeties and brutes, our own hidden wounds, and suppressed memories.
So what do you think, listener? What resonated with you most in this story? What do you think the narrator is remembering? Could it be a moment of sudden realization where they understand how the brute gained power in their life? Or maybe a memory of resistance, a time when they fought back against that oppressive force?
Maybe it's a combination of both. You know,
Yeah.
a memory of both vulnerability and strength, of pain and resilience.
Whatever those missing pieces hold, this document is a powerful reminder that healing is a journey, not a destination. It's about acknowledging our wounds, confronting our demons, and ultimately integrating all parts of ourselves, the light and the shadow.
And sometimes the most difficult memories, the ones we try hardest to forget, are the ones that hold the key to our liberation.
It's like the narrator saying, if I can remember, if I can face the truth, then maybe I can finally be free.
Powerful stuff.
This deep dive has been unlike any other. We've explored a world within a world.
A landscape of the psyche.
That's both familiar and unsettling. We encountered a scared little girl named Sweetie, a menacing figure called the Brute, and a narrator just struggling to make sense of it all.
We talked about the power of metaphor, the importance of confronting negativity, and the possibility of healing, even from the deepest pain.
And even though we have more questions than answers,
That's okay.
that's okay.
Sometimes the most valuable insights come from the questions we ask, not the answers we find.
So we'll leave you with this. What happens when we finally remember the full extent of our inner struggles? Is facing our brutes, whatever form they may take, the key to unlocking true freedom and self-acceptance? We'd love to hear your thoughts on this deep dive. Share your insights and interpretations on our social media. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.